Now we're going to move on to the second religious tradition in Chinese religion, which is Taoism. Lao Tzu is the founder of Taoism. His life and identity are even shadowier than that of Confucius. Recently, scholars have even questioned whether or not he was a real person, but popularly, he is believed to have been a real person who lived in China in the 6th century BCE, making him a contemporary of Confucius. So both of these systems really did begin right about the same time. Legend also says that Lao Tzu and Confucius knew each other and knew of each other's work and philosophy. Of course, we don't know if we can substantiate this with historical evidence. Lao Tzu is the author of the Tao Te Ching. It is a short little volume that contains sayings that describe the Tao and Taoism. The name itself, Tao Te Ching, translates to the classic of the way and its power, and Taoism is very much about the Tao, or the way. This tiny work contains all the essential teachings of Taoism, and we'll talk a lot more about what the way actually means. Taoism, just like Confucianism, began as a philosophy, really a way to live one's life, and later developed into an organized and ritualized religion with priests and a sacramental system. Very little is known about the life of Lao Tzu. It is not even known for sure that he really did exist, because the earliest biography of him was not written until several hundred years after his death, and is believed to be a composite biography of 3 different people. However, the myth or story of his life is well known. The words Lao Tzu actually means old master, so we don't know if this was what his real name was, since this seems to be more of a title. He is believed to have been a court archivist during his life and to work as a private tutor for students in his town at night. Very similarly to Confucius, who also held a minor government position for most of his life, but taught his own philosophy to local students. So Lao Tzu and Confucius lived at the same time, had similar jobs, and were both responding to the time of unrest in China. So we can look at their philosophies and see how they responded almost completely opposite to this time of warfare and unrest in China, and what they thought the best way was to deal with it or respond to it. Unlike Confucius, however, Lao Tzu became so fed up with the chaotic and violent situation in China at the time that he decided to just go off and to leave China and go off by himself. Remember that at this time, many people were actually leaving their homes, leaving parts of China because the warfare and fighting had gotten so bad. So Lao Tzu thought it was simply better to leave, while Confucius actually tried to stay and fix things. So they did physically respond to the situation in different ways. The legend has it that as he was crossing the border out of China, one of his former students was working as a border official and recognized him. He knew that Lao Tzu was probably leaving to go off and live the life of a recluse somewhere and would never return. So he told Lao Tzu that he would not let him leave until he wrote down his teachings, because he had never done that before. So Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching at that time and left China forever, never to be seen again. So also like Confucius, his student is responsible for getting his teachings out there and making them so popular. In terms of the myths of origins, there is the Tao. The Tao is a universal force that has always existed and will always exist. The Tao is quite similar to Brahman from Hinduism, a force that pervades everything in the universe. It is said in the Tao Te Ching that the Tao existed before words and names, before heaven and earth, and before the 10,000 things. It is the unlimited father and mother of all limited things. The Tao was a sort of force or undifferentiated potential. From the Tao, everything came into being. From the Tao came the yin and the yang, the 2 opposite parts, and everything in the world comes from these concepts of yin and yang, which we'll talk more about. In terms of myths of endings, we still have the cult of ancestors in Taoism. Everyone becomes a spirit after death, and your situation in the afterlife is determined less by who you were in life, and more by the prayers and rituals performed by your descendants after your death. So when you die, you actually go to a bad place automatically. Everyone goes to the same place, like an underworld, and it's the responsibility of your descendants to perform proper rituals to help you ascend up to heaven and keep you there so that you can have a happy afterlife, and then you'll be able to help your descendants while they're still living. The Tao is similar to Brahman in terms of the concept, but instead of realizing that you are the same as this force in Hinduism, the Tao is a way, and it's a way that you must follow. You must live according to the Tao and not work against it. The Tao is really the most natural way. We can really think of following the Tao as going with the flow, quite literally, as the most common symbols of the Tao are water and women, or the feminine. But remember, this is a patriarchal sense of the feminine, and it tends to mean more yielding and passive. So just as water all flows together, it never goes against the current, but always chooses the smoothest, easiest path and doesn't fight against his nature, so we must be as human beings. Lao Tzu, because he came from a patriarchal society, thought of women as more calm, silent, passive, and inactive. So living in this way was also seen as living according to the Tao. What going against the Tao would mean would really to be angry or violent, too ambitious, to force yourself to do anything you don't really want to do, or doing something that's stressful or makes you anxious. So as you can see, living according to the Tao is really kind of a hippie mentality and has often been compared to that, and became quite popular in this 1960s countercultural revolution. Living according to the Tao stresses that people should relax and be happy, do the least amount of work, not be ambitious, not try to be powerful or rich. Those are the worst things you can do according to Taoism. It's all about living a simple, relaxed, and easy life, doing as little as you have to do so that you have time to simply relax and do the things that you enjoy in life. One main virtuous ideal in Taoism is the concept of Wu Wei, which means non-action. It really advocates a non-confrontational, passive, and uninvolved lifestyle. As in, if you don't have to take action, just don't. Stay out of it. So Wu Wei is action without overaction. Don't do more than you have to. Don't feel like you have to act just to do something. That being a bystander, letting others work it out for themselves, is actually the better choice. It also involves not doing anything that goes against your nature or your natural inclinations. So if you want to be a writer or a painter or a musician, and that makes you the happiest, you shouldn't try to be a banker or a lawyer or a doctor just to be financially stable or to make someone else happy. So really the natural, simple, and even weak option is the best one. Following the Tao, according to Taoism, leads to true freedom, and really withdrawal from society into nature is the ultimate goal of Taoists. Because the Tao is found most clearly in nature, living alone in nature or simply being in nature by oneself is the surest way to understand and live according to the Tao. For religious Taoism, three great virtues were also added to this, which are longevity, or living a long and healthy life, prosperity, which is financial success, but understood to be earning enough to take care of yourself and to be generous towards others, and posterity, which is having many children, so that you have enough descendants on earth to pray and perform rituals for you so that you can have a happy afterlife. Everything begins and ends with the Tao in Taoism. It is the ultimate. It is not a personal God in itself, but it is the source of everything, and it is important to live according to the Tao at all times. But the Tao that can be spoken of is not the eternal Tao, so there is no way to accurately describe what the Tao is in words. Human words will always fail to capture what the Tao truly is. Instead, you have to intuitively come to understand the Tao through really being in nature and seeing the way of the Tao. So there are no specific doctrines or rules that one has to live by, because the Tao is meant to be understood personally by each person. However, religious Taoism did come to form a pantheon of gods, which are really a blending of Taoist philosophy and the gods of Chinese folk religion that predate Taoism. There are a pantheon of local gods that many people in Asia still pay reverence to and perform rituals for. There is a trinity of gods that are worshipped in religious Taoism. At the top of this trinity is the Jade Emperor, or the celestial worthy of primordial beginning. This is really a personalized form of the Tao, and has been termed an avatar of the Tao. So the Tao really did go from being a universal force described by Lao Tzu to a high god by the 4th century BCE. The second person in the trinity is Tao Chun, or celestial worthy of numinous treasure. This is a lower god and has been described as a sort of Holy Spirit, in that it is the power that makes the Tao known to people. The third is Lao Tzu, who was raised to a godlike status after his death for his role in describing the Tao to people. Then there is the concept of the yin and the yang. These are two opposite but balancing forces in the world. The yin and the yang came from the Tao, and Taoists think of the world in this fashion. Everything in the world is either yin or yang. In this world, we need opposing yet balancing forces to create harmony. We can't have all of one thing. And as you can see in the symbol, each side also contains a small part of its opposite. So it contains the seed of the opposing force. So this is how we can see that they are not contradictory, but complementary. So in Taoism and Chinese religion in general, the symbol of the yin and the yang is seen as the ultimate ideal of balance, that you need both of these opposing forces, and they have to be in a balanced state. Not having a balance and having all of one or all of the other, that's what's considered a negative in life in Chinese religion. Yin and yang is not good and bad. Good is having a balance of yin and yang. Bad would be having all yin or all yang. So some of the aspects of life that are associated with yin and yang can be important to know so that you can understand the nature of what is yin and what is yang. So yin is the dark side in the symbol. It is passive, inactive, blending, female, soft, death, winter, and Taoism, which we'll talk about more in a minute. Yang is the light side, or the white side. It is active, forceful, day, male, life, summer, and it's Confucianism. So this is how the Chinese see the complementary nature of Taoism and Confucianism. The blending between these two religions are understood in terms of the yin and the yang. Although they are pretty much opposite, which may be clear by now, that Confucianism and Taoism address very different aspects of life. Confucianism is all about one's social responsibilities, one's ethical responsibilities towards others, whereas Taoism is more of a mystical philosophy. It's all about the individual and the individual's relationship to the universe and nature. So they work together in a very unique way. And just like the yin and the yang is a form of balance, a positive in Chinese religion is seen as a person having a blending of Taoist beliefs and actions and Confucian beliefs and actions. So this is how these two religions really work together, and they're not seen as competing with one another or having tension with one another. They are both seen as necessary and containing the seeds of the others within them. On a daily basis, many Chinese practice what is called Tai Chi. This is actually a reenactment of the origin story of Taoism, how the pre-existent Tao gave rise to the yin and yang, which gave rise to the world. Tai Chi is also a way to increase health and longevity, which is one of the main ethical virtues in Taoism, to increase your health and vitality so that you live a long and healthy life. Tai Chi is an exercise that accomplishes this. Tai Chi has become more popular today among many people in life as a way to create muscle tone and balance, and it's seen as a very healthy activity. Also, the movements are slow and natural, not jerky, so they're seen as mimicking the way of the Tao. So it's also supposed to help one to better understand the Tao. On a regular basis, many Taoists will go to a Taoist temple to perform Li rituals with the priest. These rituals can be performed in honor of an ancestor, a local god, or could be a purification rite for oneself, or to a service to honor one of the Trinity. These rituals usually involve the lighting of candles or incense, the bringing of offerings of food or flowers, and the chanting of portions of the Tao Te Ching by a priest. One of the main rituals for Taoists is the funeral ceremony, which is an intricate and expensive ritual. It is important to perform a correct funeral ritual because it ensures that the spirit of the deceased individual will be able to ascend from a hell-like place to heaven in the afterlife. Again, paying proper respect to one's ancestors ensures their happy afterlives and also that they will help you in your own lifetime. So these rituals are very important in Chinese religion. Taoism is definitely a mystical philosophy and religion. One is encouraged to experience the Tao in a personal, mystical way by being in nature and experiencing the Tao firsthand. The Tao cannot be spoken of accurately, so it really can only be experienced in an intimate way in order to better understand it. To experience the Tao, you really have to be alone and silent in nature. It is important in Taoism to break down the barriers between oneself and the universal Tao. Also, in Taoism, living a healthy life is elevated to the status of a mystical experience. Eating healthy foods, practicing Tai Chi, and taking certain medicines and herbs is very popular in China with Chinese medicine, as many of you may have heard of. So we have this emphasis in Chinese religion that feeling healthy and living a good life is a religious and ethical responsibility. Taking supplements and herbs like ginseng, green tea, ginkgo is meant to restore one's longevity and vitality, which is really a part of one's religion in Chinese culture. It's not seen as a secular aspect or just a sort of self-involved goal to be healthy. It's really considered a religious goal. Philosophical Taoism really does encourage withdrawal from society, as Lao Tzu did. If society becomes too chaotic, stressful, or confrontational, then the best choice is just to withdraw from it and live in nature and live with the Tao and according to the Tao. This is, of course, balanced by Confucianism and its emphasis on cultivating proper relationships with other people to create a good society. As you can see, if everyone was purely a Taoist, there would be no society. Everyone would simply go off by themselves to live in nature. So again, we see the importance of the balance between Taoism and Confucianism in Chinese religion. Both are seen as good and both are seen as necessary to complement and complete the other. Religious Taoism does have a hierarchy of priests who devote themselves to living according to the Tao, studying the Tao Te Ching, and performing rituals for their parishioners. However, the Taoist priesthood is mostly limited to Taiwan because it is not allowed in China anymore. So really the only place in the world where you can still see religious Taoism as a lived religion is, for the most part, Taiwan and to some extent Korea.